At Bay Market Cafe, we know life can get in the way of good food, so we're here to offer a hand. Online ordering is back, and this time, it's better than ever. If you overslept and are running out of time, order online and pick it up. Raining? Get it delivered. On your way to go there or do that, order and pick it up. Sun scorching? Meeting? Get it delivered. That way, you can spend more time doing this or that with him, her, they, and them. So whether you need your morning coffee, you're craving a red velvet donut, ramen, a lamb burger, or a falafel pita, order the food you love and skip the line. Pick it up or have it delivered. That's Bay Market Online.
Evening, and thank you for joining us for the 8th of 19 candidate forums for the 2021 general elections in the Cayman Islands, being hosted by the Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce in association with Foster's. My name is Mike Gibbs, and I have the honor of being the current president of the Chamber, and I will also be one of the panelists asking the questions this evening, along with past president of the Chamber, Chris Duggan. I'd like to begin my opening comments by welcoming each of the Bodden West candidates, Vincent Frederick and Chris Saunders, and thanking them for accepting the Chamber's invitation to participate in this forum. Your willingness to appear on the same platform demonstrates to voters that you take the democratic process seriously and are ready to respond to a series of questions on the top issues as identified by a recent online Chamber survey. More than 400 responses and over 200 questions have been submitted by the survey, and these will help to frame the questions for this evening's forum. There is certainly not enough time to ask all the questions, but we will do our best to cover the topics that have been identified as the most important to the Cayman Islands and the Bodden West constituency. When the Chamber was established in 1965, the goal was to create an organization that supports, promotes, and protects the interests and welfare of its members and the wider community. Being nonpartisan, we have hosted forums every election year since the 1988 election. So for 9 elections, we have provided members of the community with an opportunity to hear from their candidates and educate themselves before Election Day. These forums have taken weeks of planning and preparation, with all the credit going to the hard-working Chamber staff, but would not have been possible without the financial support of our sponsors, Foster's, Affinity, Bodden's Legal and Corporate, and DART, so a very big thank you to them. I would also like to extend a wholehearted thanks to our media partners, Cayman Mile Road, Cayman Life TV, Radio Cayman, Government Information Services, and ICCI-FM for agreeing to broadcast tonight's forum. It is the first time that we have live streamed the forums on the internet, and we hope that this new format will enable even more people to watch them in the comfort of their own home. It is now time to begin this evening's forum. I will therefore turn the proceedings over to Mr. Will Pinot, CEO of the Chamber, who will serve as this evening's moderator, and he will explain the rules of the forum and introduce the Bodden West candidates.
Good evening, candidates. The rules for tonight's forum are as follows. Each candidate will be asked a series of questions, and you'll have 2 minutes to respond if you choose to do so. Each candidate will be allowed to answer without interruption and is free to differ with an opinion or position of another candidate during your allotted response time. We'll ask you to deal solely with the issues, and at the conclusion of the forum, each candidate will be allowed 2.5 minutes to deliver a closing statement. I'll now introduce the candidates for the Bodden West constituency. We begin with Mr. Chris Saunders. Mr. Saunders and his family have been living in his home constituency of Bodden West for the past 38 years. Since being elected in 2017, Mr. Saunders brought the most private member motions. Of the 19 motions brought, 14 passed unanimously. Mr. Saunders also seconded 9 private members' motions, where 5 were passed. Mr. Saunders is a CPA and has worked in various government departments, including Lands and Survey, Treasury, Internal Audit, and the Office of Auditor General. Mr. Saunders has over 20 years of senior management experience in the private sector, where he has held senior management positions in banking and telecommunications. Shortly after leaving university, Mr. Saunders volunteered to teach at the prison and has maintained a passion for education. Prior to being elected, Mr. Saunders also volunteered with Meals on Wheels. Mr. Saunders is a former director of the Health Services Authority and a former member of the Immigration Business Staffing Plan Board. In his spare time, he is an avid reader, Scrabble, chess, and dominoes player. Welcome, Mr. Saunders.
Thank you, Will.
Mr. Vincent Frederick is formerly an HR manager of 30 years and has a proven track record of serving in various public and private leadership roles. He has served as an active member of the Health Insurance Commission, the Water Authority Board, and recently on the National Housing Development Trust. He has remained an active and committed member of the Bodden Town Heritage Day Committee and has served as president on 2 past occasions. In addition, he is also the chairman of the new Self-Help Community Foundation that focuses predominantly on youth development. Well, at this time, we're going to take a short break, and we'll be back to begin the questioning of our Bodden Town West candidates. Please stay tuned.
Behind everything we do is a promise. Better. Better because we care, because we all have a common goal, to be better at cooking, to be better at eating right, and taking care of ourselves, to live in a better community, to just feel better. Today and tomorrow and the next day. Do it for you. Do it for them. Do it to prove something to yourself. Do it to carry on a family recipe. Or just because. But when you aim for the stars, better just works. We're Fosters. And we're better. Because of you, because of them, because of this place. And because we care.
Welcome back to the Chamber of Commerce Candidates Forum for Bodden Town West. We're going to begin this evening with the questioning, and so right now we're going to turn it over to President Mike Gibbs to ask the first question for this evening.
Thank you, Will, and again, good evening, candidates. This first question will be addressed to Mr. Saunders first, and then Mr. Frederick will answer the same question. And it's the first really questioning about what makes you the candidate of choice for the voters of Bodden Town West?
Thank you very much, Mike. And first I wanted to just thank Shawnette, my wife of 22 years, who have been together with me for 31, and my daughter Jordan, who's in attendance. Simply put, I love people, I love my country, and I love my community. My country has given me a lot. They have invested in me, and I think I owe a debt of gratitude to the Caymanian people to give them back the best years of my life where I can actually be functional and give back something. The country has given me the tools to be competent, and all they ask of me is to care and be committed. And that's the reason why I'm actually running. I think that there's a lot of issues that we need to tackle. These are serious times, and a lot of the issues that we need to deal with are going to be very uncomfortable. But nonetheless, I think that Caymanian people have matured to a point where they are ready now to deal with the difficult issues, and I think that's one of the things that we'll have to do. So, in short, I care about people, I love the people, and I think more than anything, I have the skills necessary to tackle a lot of the issues that are facing our average Caymanians. And one of the things that we need to want to focus over the next 4 years and beyond is on the quality of life. There are too many people struggling in this country unnecessarily, and I think that's one of the things that we'll have to tackle. And I was listening to your intro coming and speaking to the chamber and why it was actually founded. And I just want to put you guys on notice tonight that some of the issues that we will have to tackle tonight is going to be uncomfortable for some of your members, because in some cases, some of the challenges we have are also brought about by some of your own members. So I'm just getting you guys on notice right now that, again, that's going to be part of the uncomfortable conversation. But I think we do have the tools necessary that we can actually have people living a better life in Cayman. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Frederick?
Good evening, Cayman. Good evening, Bodden Town voters. Good evening, everyone here tonight. Thank you all for listening to the show. Those people on Facebook, those listening on the local media channels, thank you all for being here with us tonight. I am formerly an HR manager. I have served over 30 years in that position. Throughout my whole organization, serving in the private sector, I see myself as a stable choice as a representative for the people of Bodden Town West. I come from a humble family. I was born into politics. I have been inspired from politics from the days of Mr. Jim Bodden and Mr. Hag Bodden. I have served and worked with Mr. Roy Bodden and Mr. Gilbert McLean on various occasions in politics. And I know the ways and means of how to reach out and sympathize with the people of Bodden Town West. There's a lot of people that was calling out to me to address the concerns that was happening in that particular constituency. One of those that came about was the lack of leadership. Leadership is something that you're not born with. It is something that you have to learn. It is something that is adaptable. It is something that should be there. You should have empathy and sympathy for the people and their needs. If I'm given the opportunity to serve in that position, I intend to do my very best to be your representative. I think I have the skill sets. I have served on many boards. I have served in many positions, and I have done the best I could with the tools and resources that was available to ensure that the people of the Cayman Islands had a better choice. There are many things in life. There's many problems in this country. There's things that is going on that needs to be addressed, and I intend to be there on April 14th as your next representative for Bodden Town West. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, gentlemen. The next question will be addressed to Mr. Frederick first, and it addresses national issues. So the question is, keeping Cayman safe from the COVID virus and reopening the economy are among the top issues that will confront the next government. So if elected, what other major issues or concerns do you intend to bring to the table for the new government to address?
One of the most important national issues that we have today is the lack of taking care of our youths. In a country, the youths are the future. And if we do not look after the youths, then we are failing as a country and people. We are a country that competes with jobs, competes with other countries to get the best quality labor employment into these islands. And if we don't start teaching and leaning into our kids and taking care of our children to fulfill these roles in the future, then we are definitely failing as a country. There are many silent problems that is happening today that we as Caymanians and fathers and mothers don't know about our kids. Many of the Caymanian people are too busy working from job to job to know what is happening within their child's social life. I have experienced a lot of especially young women, who has been through a lot of trauma. And we're talking about bullying, we're talking about peer pressure, we're talking about rape, we're talking about getting pregnant and having self-abortions on their own. These things are happening and we don't hear no one talking about it. It seems to be like they're left to be their own adults and to make their own decisions. But this is not something that happened just overnight. This is something that systematically happened since we started importing foreign labor into the country. The Caymanians have fell away, and we pay more attention to the foreign aspect of developing the island for those type of people. We need to just invest more time and attention into the youths, put major facilities into place, help build them, and move forward.
Thanks, Mr. Frederick and Mr. Saunders.
Thank you very much. First of all, with regards to reopening the economy, I think that is something that has to be left to the medical experts. One of the things I've learned in my years of experience is that where people are subject matter experts on some issues, we leave them to do their jobs. We are politicians, and one of the things that we don't want is politicians start deciding a lot of different things. So regards to opening the country, the next government, I think, should do the responsible thing of actually seeking the advice of the medical community and the medical experts. With regards to the overall issues that is facing this country as a national standpoint, cost of living is a major issue, and I think that's one of the things that we need to tackle. Universal health care, and also the creation of a disability or a social net for our people in case something happens to them. We can no longer live in a country where most people are either one heart attack, one stroke, or one medical emergency away from being bankrupt. This is unprogressive, this is un-Caymanian, and this is not our country that is moving to the next century needs to be. 95% of our residents actually make their living by providing a service, and we need to make sure that they have the quality of life to show for it at the end of it. One of the other things that we need to also look at seriously is the government fee structure and what the government charges with stamp duty. Again, a lot of Caymanians are unable to participate in the Caymanian economy simply because of some of the barriers that we have put in place. And again, as I said to most people at my meeting last Saturday night, we need to recognize that there are people right at this very moment while you're listening to me that are getting paid and thinking of ways to take your money and to basically do what is best for them. We need leaders, we need people who are serious. This is a serious time that can take on those issues. So putting the universal health care in place, dealing with cost of living is a major issue. And also, on a separate note, the creation of a bond market, which we'll speak about more in detail throughout the night.
Great. Thanks, Mr. Saunders.
Thank you. Mr. Saunders, staying with you with the next question, focusing more at the constituency level. And what major project would you like to achieve over the next 4 years to improve the quality of life for the residents of Bodden Town West?
Well, one of the major things that we are seeing now as there are more developments coming up is flooding. There was a time there are parts of Bodden Town you would not see any flooding. And now, because of different roadworks, and in some cases, especially even now, and we saw it recently in the Red Bay area where the government ran out, anxiously paved a lot of roads, and in some cases, the roads are 8 inches above other people's yards, and as a result, people are starting to flood. So it is kind of those little rush jobs. But what I would like to see from a constituency level is proper planning, having a proper flood management system. That's one of the issues that's also there. We still have the issue of lighting in some areas from a safety standpoint that we also need to look at. Speed bumps is also an issue, but that, again, we have some issues with consensus because we have some people on the road who want speed bumps and you have some people who don't want speed bumps. And the rules require that at least 75% of the residents on the road will have to request a speed bump. So that's one of the challenges that we do have in terms of getting some level of consensus between some of the members on different roads. But overall, I would definitely like to see more community parks. Northward, for example, is one of the first subdivisions. And unfortunately, the way in which the land for public purpose, LPP, was set aside, between back then and now, we're having a difficult time identifying some of those land at public spaces. So it's one of the things that we like to get more from a park standpoint. But what is more important is that flooding issue that needs to be dealt with seriously because there are parts now that was never flooding before. And also, like I said, from a crime standpoint, lighting, I'd love to see more cameras in the community. Last Saturday night at my meeting, we had an unfortunate incident where somebody's vehicle got vandalized. I was really shocked at that kind of behavior. We had to call the police, and of course, there were no cameras there to even report who the perpetrator was, but it is sad. But it is what it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Frederick, same question.
I believe development is the most important thing facing the northward, the Bodden Town West constituencies. I can clearly see that Bodden Town West needs some changes. It's a lovely place to have houses, homes, and there's a lot of residents, and it's a peaceful community, but it is lacking commercial activity. I intend to work with the government to identify areas that needs to be rezoned to neighborhood commercial sections. A cross-section of the lands needs to be that, and to allow building of some commercial plazas to introduce commerce into the area. There's a need for certain things like, simple things like a barber shop, a beauty salon. You can have a member of parliament office located in one of those plazas. There's currently no space for none. And We can have food restaurants, small pharmacies, little drugstores and stuff like that that the people within the community can go to and be involved, don't have to go far from home. We can invite doctors, dental offices and stuff into that area so that we don't have to have the people commuting out of that particular area to go anywhere. And one of the other things I plan to work on and to engage on is to work with the government on finding out the problems with the Beach Bay development. It has been sitting there a long time. It is stagnant, and it needs to be resolved. It is a good plan for the area. I believe it will bring investment, jobs, and opportunities for the people in Bodden Town West. And if I'm elected, that will be one of my first priorities. So it will be rezoning certain parcels of land to introduce more commerce activity and to get engaged with the developers in government and the citizens on the Beach Bay development.
Thank you.
The next question, staying with you, Mr. Frederick, is talking about the Northwood Prison. So in 2019, the Human Rights Commission described the prison as overcrowded, chronically underfunded, and in need of urgent investment. They further said that plans to examine the needs of the prison system and the upgrades to the physical infrastructure are moving far too slowly. What is your view on these two statements?
Well, a good question. Thank you for that. The Northwood Prison is a very old prison. It was built back before my days. I came of age in the 1980s when I was a little boy to be aware of what going to prison was. However, the first thing that I found with the Northwood Prison, that was built in a community of high residential zone. And that was I remember the older people talking at that time that was an issue for them at the stage building of that prison. However, the problem that we have with the prison is that we need to reform our laws so that we don't keep sending our youths to the prison on a little ganja charge or a little miscellaneous charge and giving them a record. That's why the prison is overcrowded. And we have a problem in this country where we don't look at reforming these prisoners from when they get out of prison and putting them into jobs. We just let them go. They go out. They don't know anything else, and they comes right back in. And Cayman is hard, and Cayman is hard for all of us. And it's harder for them that is coming out that can't find jobs. They can't find a place to live. They have nowhere to go. They cannot get food. So the easiest thing to do is to go and do another criminal act and go back in. The prison needs to be upgraded. Unfortunately, it is too old, and it needs to be looked at, invested in, and maybe even moved from the location to another one. I will support, with the help of the government, to find a way to solve those problems and to move forward as a community and as a country for all the people, regardless of any criminal activities that they may have done.
All right. Thanks, Mr. Frederick. And same question to you, Mr. Saunders.
First of all, I want to thank Mr. Herbert Crawford and his team, the Prison Inspectorate Board, for the work that they have done. Maybe just coincidentally, but it was just last week, I was actually reading their annual report. And I think the Deputy Governor may be watching, and just for the record, there's a slight discrepancy of 13 prisoners missing between that prison report and also the statistics report that your ESO department have. So you need to find those 13 prisoners. But just from a reporting standpoint, I should say, let's make a note of that discrepancy. But I want to say that, first of all, the prison is near and dear to me. During my time of when I was working in internal audit and also in the Auditor General's office, even before going off to university, we used to do prisons inspection or audits on the prison. And I saw where there was a need for a lot of different stuff, especially on the rehabilitation side. And that's the reason why, just as a fresh out of university, one of the first places I actually volunteered to teach was actually at the prison. And you learn so much by actually being amongst the inmates and understand the reason why it is that they have been there. Since being elected, I've tried to attend just about every single event that I've been invited to. With regards to the prison itself, yes, it is an old structure, but at the same time, I must say, we need to look at rehabilitation. We cannot, and I cannot support $30 million to build a new prison when in fact we still have a lot more work that needs to be done. We're spending $80,000 a year to house one prisoner and about $150,000 a year for even a young person in Bonaventure Boy Home. These are the kind of practices that need to stop. Prison has become a big business, and my goal is not to look at increasing the prison population, but looking at ways in which we can actually reduce the prison population, put proper programs inside there for rehabilitations and everything else, so as to not have that overcrowding problem. But there are some people locked up in prison that actually shouldn't be there, that are not a danger to society. But unfortunately, prison has become big business.
Thank you, Mr. Saunders.
Thank you. And staying with you, Mr. Saunders, for the fifth question, is focusing on education. And education is crucial to the success of the youth and our future. There is an increasing divide between the quality of education between the public and private schools. What measures would you support to correct this imbalance?
Well, first of all, I'll have to disagree with that question. And I think there's an issue with education. And again, like I said at the start, we're going to have some uncomfortable conversations tonight. Prior to being elected, I actually used to interview business students for government scholarships on behalf of the Education Council. I interviewed children both from the private schools and also from the public schools. And I can honestly say to you that the kids in the public school performed extremely well. And in many cases, they were really very talented. So there's this misperception out there as if though there's something wrong within the public schools. And what I've found is that many employers are actually perpetuating that story as an excuse to not hire Caymanians. And where this is really, where the rubber meets the road is that even when the Caymanian kids, our Caymanian kids, come back from university, qualified, having been educated in North America and Europe, they still can't get the jobs. So you can't sit back and say, well, there's something wrong with the Caymanian local education system, when in fact, even after the kids come back from university, they're still struggling to find jobs. It is that misperception or that view that's put out there as an excuse to not hire Caymanians. What I can honestly say, though, that there are some issues within the public school that we can improve on. Is it perfect? No. Can we do better? Yes. We can start by bringing back textbooks in the schools. I mean, something as basic as textbooks is missing from the public school. So that's a resource issue. That is not a quality issue. That is a political issue. There's also the issue of governance, where we have too many people telling the people in education what to do. Again, politicians and others are not educators. They're not experts. We need to leave the experts to do their job. So it is that resourcing issue we need to deal with, that governance issue we need to deal with, and that misperception issue that we need to deal with. And those are the things that I think we need to face within the education system.
Thank you. Mr. Frederick, same question, please.
Education, always on the menu. Thank you. Education in the Cayman Islands needs to be addressed wholeheartedly. It is something that affects all of us. It affects our children, it affects our lives, it affects them getting jobs. It affects the opportunity to even own their own businesses. Uneducated kids tend to get in more trouble than those that are educated. So it does affect our society as a whole. How we can fix it? I mean, we have changed curriculums, we have changed teachers, we have built schools, we have tried everything. We have asked the government to stay out and keep a hands-off approach, but still they are failing. And we got to face the failing issue. They are failing. Again, I go back to what I want to say to the public. We don't talk about our youths when they are having issues. If children are having these kind of issues at age 13, 14, 15, and is attending school, how can we expect them to learn and to pass and to give us the results that we want? We cannot. We need to start back from the home. Education starts at the home. That's how I was educated. When we had the churches, when we had our neighbors, when we had our elders teaching us respect, manners, to be humble, to be kind, and to be peaceful and loving. That is what made Cayman what it is, the Cayman kind. It started from home, and it went right up through the system, through the education system. And we didn't have good schools then. We had pencils, we didn't have shoes, we had sandals, if we had any, and we came out quite well. Today we have everything to give the kids, but still we are failing. So we need to put some effort into looking deeply at what's behind the problem with the kids at those ages.
I'd like to thank the candidates. We've gone through the first 5 questions, so we're going to take a short commercial break. And when we return, the second round of questions begin. So stay tuned.
March in Cayman is hot, but at Foster's, it's frozen.
Frozen Food Month is back, and we're giving away 4 $250 Foster's cards. To enter, just purchase any 3 products from the frozen department from now until March 27th. It's that easy.
You could grab a frozen pizza for dinner, frozen berries for a morning smoothie, and frozen plant-based sausages for something different.
Exactly. Just don't forget to enter online at fosters.ky/Frozen Food Month. Foster's, better because we care.
You hear people talk about the economy all the time. But what is the economy exactly? The economy is the flow of money between the people, the companies, and the government in the Cayman Islands. Why is it important to understand the economy? Well, just like the engine of a car, the better we understand the economy, the better we can make it run, and the more prosperous we can become as a community. The first important thing to understand about the economy is that the private sector is the main source of all wealth. Think about it. Most people work for companies in the private sector, both big companies and small businesses. But even if you work for the government, your salary comes from the fees and duties paid to the government by private sector companies and their employees. That's why we call the private sector the prosperity engine that powers our economy and drives the country forward. When business is booming, companies have more money to spend on salaries, bonuses, and promotions. Employees with more money buy more products and services from other businesses. All those people and businesses spending money generates revenue for the government, which pays for important services like education, roads, emergency services, and care for the elderly. So when the private sector is doing well, everyone does well. But when the private sector isn't doing well, like during a recession, the money dries up and everyone suffers. So when you hear people ask, how do we make our country more prosperous? The answer is pretty simple. Grow the economy. After all, you can't get more money from a system that isn't making more money. That's not economics. That's just common sense. In this video series, we're going to take a closer look at our economy to see how we can fuel our prosperity engine and how to make sure everyone benefits. For now, thanks for watching, and remember to share this video with your family and friends so they can learn more about our economic prosperity engine.
Welcome back to the Chamber of Commerce Candidates Forum for Bodden Town West. I'll turn it back over to Chris Duggan, who will begin the next round of questioning.
Thank you, Will. So the next question is again to you, Mr. Frederick. It's on affordable housing. So the question is, the Cayman Islands has one of the world's highest GDPs per capita, but the Caymanian dream of purchasing or building a home seems to be slipping away. What strategies would you support or propose to ensure that there is affordable housing for residents in Bodden Town West?
Thank you for the question, Chris. You're talking up my line. Just recently tendered my resignation as a director of the National Housing Development Trust, so I do know some information about what's going on in there. We have a problem. We have a national housing crisis in this island. There are many Caymanians living in their parents' homes that just cannot afford to own a house. Land is too expensive. The cost of starting or looking to start a house, even for a couple going to the financial institution, cannot qualify because the wages just don't fit the qualification process. I have seen and I've heard stories where people can't even afford rent in this island. So we are in a situation where the government needs to lend a hand in this situation where we have a lot of crown land. And I'm thinking, I have a new idea that I will bring forward with the government where we can lease some of this crown land for Caymanians to own at $1 a year for 99 years. Give them a piece of land. Do a deal with the development bank. Get them in with the development bank and get deals with the contractors to build these houses. We can do it on a mass scale. We can introduce a special fee and put all of the housing authorities, all of the housing departments under one national housing authority. We need to combine resources to ensure this is done. I plan to if I'm elected, to have the government introduce infrastructure fee on accommodations for guests coming into the island to offset the cost that it will take to get this done.
Thank you, Mr. Frederick, and to you, Mr. Saunders, same question.
First of all, there are two issues that we need to accept why we do have this problem. First, there's a market system, and then there's also the bad policies of where we are. Start with the market system. We have created a situation right now where in order for people or anyone to qualify for PR to get those points, it is almost mathematically impossible to get those points without buying real estate. So we have, in essence, placed an artificial demand on Caymanian property simply because of our immigration system. So when you have 6,000, 7,000 people right now sitting on PR, and you know many of them, vast majority of them, literally had to buy real estate to get there, that increased demand drove up the cost of land and property in Cayman just by demand, and that's just market system. And we saw that already. And the perfect example is you look at the 2007, 2008 financial crisis. Even then, foreclosures in Cayman were limited. You fast forward to the changes in immigration rules, and all of a sudden, the foreclosures in Cayman went up. People went bargain hunting. So it's bad policies. Then we have to look at the two issues that we need to deal with to solve this housing problem. One, the stamp duty that's being charged, and also two, the deposit that is required. What we can no longer afford to do in this country is finance long-term projects like housing that requires a 20, 30, or in some cases a 40-year payback period with deposits that are placed overnight. And this is why we need to start looking at bringing in the pension money back here, start creating a bond market where people can actually start borrowing this kind of money long-term. And the reason why that is also needed, even in year 6 or year 7, if someone starts to even struggling, you don't have to worry about losing their home because they know at the end of the day they still have a period of time in which to deal with it. So these are the kind of issues. But again, it's a combination of bad policies by the government and also not having the proper tools in place to actually help people in terms of getting it. And that's why the 0% stamp duty and that bond market is key to getting Caymanians in their home long term.
Great. Thanks, Mr. Saunders.
Mr. Saunders, staying with you for the next question, focuses on beach access. Under the Prescription Act, access to the beach is to be unencumbered for all. If elected, will you support the protection of the prescriptive right to prevent the developers from blocking access to the beach?
Absolutely. I mean, that in itself is a no-brainer. I mean, I got to be honest with you, and this is going to be a very short answer on this topic. We know where the accesses are. We know who in this country has backhoes, and they're going to tell you if we know where the path should be, we should just hire somebody to go clear the path. This is madness, and this is the law, and I really and truly can't believe in this day and age that we're still having this issue when we know someone has a legal right to go to the beach. This is something that every single Caymanian grew up and know that they're entitled to. So why the government isn't enforcing it is a bigger issue. And this is why many of these secret deals, these secret concessions, and all of these different deals that the government is making with all these different developers needs to be looked at seriously. Because I can't understand in good conscience why someone would actually go and build a development and take away something that was God-given to the people of the Cayman Islands. So it is beyond me. What the problem behind this is really lack of political will. We just need people that will go and enforce the law. The law is there, let's us enforce it. And I can tell you, I can think of one person with a backhoe that can start going down and just start clearing a path to the beach where people need to go to. And I'm sorry if anyone went and built something there that they shouldn't build it. And that's all I have to say on that issue.
Thank you, Mr. Saunders. Mr. Frederick, same question.
Beach access is a problem, not just from the road to the beach, but also walking the beach. I have experienced that for myself personally. We are Caymanians and we like to engage in our leisures that we grew up with. And I had the experience of going fishing on a property in Bodden, and a lady of a property beyond her fence, beyond the high water mark, I was actually on the Crown's land, decided that she didn't want my kind of people there. And that was very intimidating to me. I thought it was very racist, in fact. And it got to a point where they had to call the police because I was responding to her as she was responding to me. And at the end of the day, it was around the same time and we had the issues in Cayman, where we had a lot of people running people from off the beach. And the same thing today is happening with beach access. They're now blocking the beach access in and trying to own it. It is a criminal act. I think we need to put more laws in place to enforce a higher penalty for doing such things. I agree that there are issues, maybe the developer don't know, to be fair, where this line is. Maybe the developer is not aware of what's going on. He might be overseas and someone else is doing the work here. We have to be fair, but we have to enforce the laws, keep going with what we're doing, but also look at how we can do better moving forward with that.
Thank you.
Okay, staying with you, Mr. Frederick, the next question is on stayover tourism. If elected, would you support reopening our borders to stayover visitors beginning in May and reducing the time for quarantine once the number of persons vaccinated in our community reaches the percentage levels that has been set by the Public Health Department?
Thank you for the question. COVID-19 is a big issue. Our health and our lives are also a big issue. We have to be careful how we trade down that path. I leave it for the government to do. They have done a tremendous job since closing. And I leave them to take the helm at finding an opening date that will fit all and please all. I am not the expert at COVID. I am not a medical doctor. I am not the person who can give you the answers of when it will be safe to open our borders. But I know it has been safe for the Cayman Islands to have been closed. And I do support a reopening date. But to push a date prematurely without having health protocols in place is something I cannot answer and give you an honest answer tonight. This COVID is going to last us another 2 years. And as you have seen, the COVID virus tends to change rapidly. It adapts and change rapidly to adapt to the medications that are out there today. So if we open too early, maybe we have to vaccinate the people all over again because a new strain may come around and be immune to the vaccines that are here, that are currently out. These vaccines were rushed, and we don't have enough information on what it causes and what it prevents. How long does it prevent reinfection? Vaccines wear off, and sometimes you have to get boosters. So a premature date, who are we opening up to and for what? And if you're talking about the cruise tourism, where are the cruise ships going to be coming from? Because their ports are locked. Their country's borders are closed. Other Caribbean islands' borders are locked. And we're looking to reopen, I believe, at the wrong time. And we have to be cautious of that.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Saunders, to you as well.
When people form government, they form government with three primary purposes: to protect their life, to protect their liberty, and to protect their property. Life being number one. I am no medical expert, and like I said, there are people out there who are experts in that regard. So with regards to when we open, that will depend on the medical expert advice, but also at the same time, a certain amount of comfort that at least we see what is happening in our neighbors, basically the United States, with regards to where the bulk of our stayover tourism come from. So I would also be keen to see how their market is responding too. But the main thing here is actually protecting people's lives. I really have to give the Caymanian people credit for what it is that they have done. I mean, the same medical advice that the Cayman government receive, many other governments around the Caribbean and the world receive. But the difference is that our people, through their discipline and their tenacity, actually obey the laws, and we are fortunate for where we are today. So a lot of credit to the Caymanian people in that regard. And also, I have to give the many public servants credit for also enforcing it. And they are the ones who are the expert in this area that we will be relying on with regards to when we can bring in visitors. The Brazil strain now, I see, is now making news with regards to what is happening. We see Italy going back in lockdown now. So it is one of those things that is still moving. And as such, I'll leave it to the medical experts to decide when it is safe for us to reopen. But the primary thing for us at this point is protecting our people first. That's our primary responsibility.
Thanks, Mr. Saunders.
Thank you. Staying with you, Mr. Saunders, next question focuses on development in Bodden Town West. And the question is, there was significant community protest in Bodden Town West to the new Mandarin Oriental Hotel development being located within the Beach Bay community. What are your views on the 9-story hotel and condominium project? Can there be a balance between development and environmental sustainability within the constituency?
First of all, I just want to say the residents of Beach Bay was right to protest that development. When you look, there's an old Caribbean saying that says, what starts bad in the morning can't be good in the evening. We started by gutting the planning law, where the people had to be notified when developments are taking place. We limit that. Then the second issue we went and did was we went and we rezoned that area. Now, the largest investment that anyone will make is buying a home. When the people of Beach Bay and the residents of Beach Bay bought their property, it was zoned a particular way. The government went out, and I want to step back a little bit and say to the developers, you buy a piece of property, you know what the zoning was, straight off the bat. You then went out and you lobbied the government to change the zoning. The zoning got changed, and then people are wondering, why is it that people are upset when people went and bought their homes knowing that this was an area that was zoned a particular way? These are the kind of issues why it is important for the government to go and engage the people properly before they go and do this rezoning, because that is where the problem came in with Beach Bay. And that has been a problem that we've been having with planning, well, some of the planning rules since, and these private deals, because part of one of those deals was even to rename the Beach Bay Road. Those are the kind of things that can't work. And those are the kind of behaviors that need to stop. These private deals with the concessions and everything needs to stop. Now, with regards to the residents, I tried my best to actually organize a meeting between the developer and the residents. And even when I was off island, I had one of my colleagues actually do that when the developer was actually on island. I met with the developer myself, and I said to him, listen, meet the people, have the conversation with the people. Of course, that never happened. But nonetheless, it has to be a situation where the people in the community needs to be informed and engaged before these major stuff are made. You just can't shove stuff down on people like that and then wonder why they behave the way they behave.
Thank you, Mr. Saunders. Mr. Frederick, same question.
Thank you for the question. I beg to differ a little bit on my opponent answer. I believe development is a necessary tool and necessary for any constituency. What we need to do is to control how we develop. We have to work in tandem with the locals, with the government, and with the developer. If government has given the green light for the zoning to be changed, that is part of the process. People buy lands, people buy it to invest. The tourism effect, the living effect, is something I'm looking at, not just on a denial issue because zones were changed or some people objected. I have been through the community, and a lot of them, since I have started canvassing, has said, why don't you look into the Beach Bay development and try and find the solution to the problem? I am working, and if I'm elected to office, I will work with the government to find out what are the issues that is stopping the development. Because as far as I know, the development has been back to planning now a few times to adjust their plans to adapt to the needs of what and concerns of the people. So I need to get in there to find out what is actually happening I haven't had the opportunity to talk to the developers as yet, but I intend to engage them as soon as if I'm elected. And this is one of the things, we cannot remain as we are and expect to have the same things over and over like the rest of the other communities. We need to start to develop as well, but develop in a timely and controlled way. There's nothing wrong with putting a hotel down there. It's a good plan. It is an excellent plan. In fact, it will benefit the people down there instead of being the other way around. So let's work on that and move forward from here.
Thank you, Mr. Frederick.
The next question addresses minimum wage. And staying with you, Mr. Frederick, what are your views on the current minimum wage of CI $6 per hour, and also on the knock-on effect of the cost of living for any future increase in minimum wage?
Thank you for the question, Chris. I think the issue here with minimum wage is it is ridiculously too low for a country with such a high cost of living. $6 an hour just can't cut it. I believe the minimum wage should be at least $10 to $11. If we can't afford to buy food, to pay rent, to send our children to school, then the burden comes back to the government. The burden comes right back to the people as well. So when you see sorry, 1 minute, please. When you see so many people from the country going to NAU for assistance, this is one of the reasons why. We stagnate our people, we suppress them, and then we complain about it. When we send them, when they go to the NAU, we need to start uplifting the people, and it starts with a good, decent living wage. If it was me, I would put it at $15 because I know how the island works. I know how expensive it is, and I know how hard it is to get a house, to get a job in this country. I believe we need to have more debates on this because this is an issue that affects the whole entire country, the region. This affects jobs. This affects getting houses. This affects giving good quality and time to your children. You know, if we are comfortable in our homes and we can go and buy homes and we can live comfortable, we have no issue paying the bills at a high cost because we are earning the money in return. But if it's at 6, and then you have to take out pension and health insurance from that, we're back down to $4.80. You know, so where are Caymanians going to survive at $4.80 an hour? It is impossible in this country to do that. And we need to really dig deep into how we're going to solve that issue. We find ways to say we can't do it, but we haven't found ways to say we can. And we need to get everybody, the chamber, the government, the people, the businesses, we need to all get together and do what is right for the country. We need to move the minimum wage to a suitable living wage. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Frederick. And same question to you, Mr. Saunders.
One of the motions that I carried last year to the Parliament, or Legislative Assembly, was to review pensions, employee benefits. And this was done especially in light of the massive withdrawals that we did on the pension side. Because when people recognize that their pension is a percentage of their income, when you have a very low income, it also translates into a very low pension because it is a percentage that you're paying on that. The government rejected it, outright rejected it. Matter of fact, there's only 2 motions that I brought that the government actually rejected, and that was one of them. The Premier at the time said that it wouldn't even entertain it because it would be an increase of cost to businesses, but without even factoring the other costs of people going to NAU and going on the public purse. We all know in Cayman that 6,000 hours is ridiculous. I can tell you 20 odd years ago when I was saving up to go to university, I worked 2 full-time jobs. I worked as a night auditor from 11 at night to 7 in the morning and got dressed at the hotel to go work my government job at 8:30 to 5. I did that for 15 months. And back then, I was getting paid $7 an hour, and by the time I factor in grats between high season and low season, it could be anywhere from $12 to $15 an hour is what we were making 20 odd years ago doing night audit work in Cayman. This issue is not going to be solved simply put because the people who are against it, again, a lot of your members here who are against it because they see there's increased cost of doing business. And unfortunately, they are the very same people who finance or make a lot of donations to the different political campaigns. So this is not something that's going to be done. We have tried unsuccessfully many times to even get the government to review it, and all you can hear is soon come. And this is why I tell people elections have consequences. I agree with my opponent that this action needs to be increased, but it has to be a gradual increase till we can actually get it up to a decent point.
I'd like to thank the candidates. We've gone through 10 questions. We're going to take a short break to allow our sponsors some promotion. So please stay with us. The next round of 5 questions begins after this break.
Feed the family for less with Foster's Pick 5.
Choose from a range of meats including chicken thighs, pork chops, ground meats, beef stir-fry, sirloin steaks, and more, and only pay $19.99 for any 5-packs.
The meat is always fresh and never previously frozen. It's the perfect way to stock up for the week. That's dinner sorted.
Look out for Pick 5 in the meat department at all Foster's supermarket locations.
Foster's, better value because we care.
Here in the Cayman Islands, the private sector is the prosperity engine that drives the country forward. Just like a real engine. The better we understand how it works, the better we can make it run, and the better off we'll be. To help illustrate how our economy works, let's take a step back in time to when there were only a few thousand people living in Cayman. In those days, most people survived by fishing or farming for food. It was a simple, wholesome life. But it was a lot of hard work. Most people bought what they needed from their neighbors. As people bought and sold things, their individual wealth went up or down. But the overall wealth of the country stayed the same. In a simple economy like this, the only way one person could increase their wealth was by reducing someone else's. In order to increase the overall wealth of the country, one of our Caymanian ancestors would have to sell something, a product or service, to someone somewhere else, and bring that money back home. In other words, we would have to export something. In those days, our biggest export was labor. Men worked overseas or on the seas and brought the money home, thereby increasing the total wealth of the country. Although the economy is much bigger and more complex today, these same principles still apply. Every time a company in Cayman sells a product or service to a customer overseas, the overall wealth of the country increases. Once it's here, it flows around the local economy between the government, the people, and the companies and becomes a part of our society's wealth. The 2 biggest sources of income for our economy today are financial services and tourism, often called the pillars of our economy. Tourists come here and spend their money. So all of the tourism companies like hotels, restaurants, buses, Stingray City Tours that make sure our visitors have a great time are helping to increase the wealth of our country. Just like tourists, clients of financial services firms come here and spend money too. So all of our financial service companies like insurance companies, fund administrators, lawyers, and accountants that facilitate investment transactions for people and companies around the world bring money into the economy and increase the overall wealth. The point is, if we want to increase the prosperity of our country, the best way to do that, in fact, the only way to do that, is to grow the private sector. In particular, the companies at the front lines that bring the wealth here from overseas in the first place. In the next video, we'll talk a little about how money moves around the economy. For now, thanks for watching, and remember to share this video with your family and friends so they can learn more about our economic prosperity engine.
Welcome back to the Chamber of Commerce Candidates Forum for Bodden Town West. I'll turn it back over to President Mike Gibbs for the next round of questions.
Thank you, Will. Mr. Saunders, this question is for you, focusing on traffic. Traffic from Bodden Town has become a massive headache as it takes residents 1 to 2 hours in the morning and evening. What solutions would you propose to improve the quality of life for residents from the eastern districts who must face these challenges day after day?
Thanks very much. First of all, when you look at the genesis of this problem, What it simply means is that too many cars are on the road at the same time. When school is out, the traffic is lighter. So it goes to show that basically when schools are in, then that's led to a lot of traffic. So one of the things that we can start looking at, especially with the schools, is can we start busing some of the private schools along with the public school children, because they're all along the same Walker's Road stretch. That, I think, will also go a big way in terms of getting some people off the road. And I think at the same time, that will also solve our problem in terms of trying to get kids in the private sector and, kids in the private schools and the public schools more integrated as in terms of how they're segregated now. So I think even getting them on the bus is a step. The second issue we need to look at is the start time and end time for work. Is that some people, I think, and government, I think, is a perfect place to start, is to start staggering the work time from anywhere between 7 to 10 and finishing anywhere from 3 to 6, depends on how we can structure it. I think that will also go to alleviate the problem and also supports the policy that we're pushing of work-life balance, where people can even be home by 3 o'clock, depends if they can even go to work a little bit earlier. Then the other issue we need to look at also is what incentives can we put in place to move a lot of the commercial activity from Georgetown into the eastern districts. Some of these law firms that we have that do a lot of international business, they have literally no local clients. These are the kind of businesses that you can give, again, stamp duty preferences and different concessions to go out in the east and start having traffic moving both ways. Perfect example also to even start, government should start by leading, by taking some government departments that are non-public facing and move them out into the eastern parts of the island where at least we can, again, start having traffic moving both ways. But you can't build any roads out of it. It's just not going to work. We have to start thinking differently and moving people out of the traffic going both directions.
Thank you, Mr. Saunders. Mr. Frederick, same question.
Thank you. Traffic is a major issue for now seeing and experiencing the traffic coming from work into Bodden West. So it's flowing in both directions now. So you get it flowing in the morning, now you're getting it flowing up in the evenings. A few weeks ago, CUC had a tree cutting down the Savannah. The amount of cars that was on the road, the traffic was backed up. One of the breakers, bumper to bumper, stopped. We had cars on the road. We have built those roads. I remember those roads being paved back when I was young, growing up in Bodden Town. And we only had one lane going and one lane coming. It's the same one lane going and one lane coming throughout that community. If we don't expect to house the many cars that we have today, we need to find another way. The public bus transportation system is certainly not working. There's no time to schedule for people to rely on that service. And also, even if it was, they will still be stuck in the same traffic as everyone else. I think we need to work to find ways and means to introduce a transit system into the island running from east to west. And I'm talking something like a tri-rail system where we can have stops, run a two-lane running east to west, with each train crossing and going up and down, stopping 1 to 2 minutes, and then moving on to the next stop. I will pay for that. I will take that every day and park my car. It will be an easy way to commute. It will operate at certain times throughout the night. And I figure the reason that we don't see such a thing is because of cost. But we need to start looking outside the box.
Thank you.
The next question addresses the cost of health insurance. And staying with you, Mr. Frederick, health insurance premiums continue to increase annually for many businesses, and especially for persons who reach retirement age. What improvements, if any, would you propose to make health insurance more affordable for businesses and for retirees?
Well, I think, first of all, health insurance in this country is too expensive. The premiums that we pay for health insurance, I was reading that today. The premiums that we pay for health insurance should something that people living in Saudi Arabia should be paying. We don't get the returns for what we pay, especially for the Sheikh insurance. I say it's useless. It is just something to say that you have insurance to pass the law, but it does not do any benefits for one's health. There's not enough coverage. Insurance companies are avoiding insuring single people that is not working in a group of more than 5. And hence those people are finding it very expensive to go to those insurance companies that do offer it, but most times end up in cynical. So what the private insurance companies are doing is sending the risky type people to cynical and taking the burden from off of the books. It has to stop. We cannot afford it. Either we scrap the mandatory insurance law or introduce competition from the outside. I believe that all children and elderly people should be given free medication and health care. Our elderly people has paid for being here, and they deserve some kind of treatment in the older years to make them peaceful and comfortable. We should not be using them as a tool and charging them the last little pension money that they have to afford insurance and medical treatment. I believe the children, the young children, we had it before, it worked, should be given free medical health care up to a certain age or till when they come out of high school. This is one of the things I will champion, and this is one of the things that I'll work with any government for.
Thanks very much, Mr. Frederick. And Mr. Saunders, the same question for you.
This is the biggest failure of this government. And the worst part about it is, now that the quote-unquote PPM and UDP is together, they can both share the blame together. One of my parliamentary regrets is that I amended one motion that passed that I wish I'd carried it the full way through. I brought a motion to the Legislative Assembly back then to bring back free health care for children, and it was passed unanimously. Unfortunately, the government did nothing about it, which the other part was I actually wanted to also bring the free health care for children and seniors, but at the time, trying to work with the government and consulting with the government, we were basically told that they were working on something for seniors separately. So I didn't need to touch that, but they will work with me on bringing back the free health care for children, something that we had. Then again, like I said, it would have made a difference because the government did nothing. My friends, the purpose of insurance is to spread risk. The risk is not being spread. What we have right now, and if you consider the private sector, that is more than 50% non-Caymanian. Every single work permit holder that comes into this country requires a clean medical. So what we have now is the private insurers are getting all of the work permit holders who are young and healthy, and they're basically insuring them at very little risk to their business. And then the other employees, which are mostly Caymanians that are basically don't fall within a certain health bracket, and I can tell you from experience because I've gone through this, they're the ones that they force to cynical, to the tune that the government is spending over $100 million a year in healthcare costs. The solution is we need to expand cynical and start spreading the risk across every single demographic, because ageism and the discrimination against older people in this country is now real because of health insurance costs, and we need to spread that cost so people at least can have a premium from $200 to $300 a month for at least for the entire working life.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mr. Saunders. Staying with you, the next question focuses specifically on the cruise industry. And it says, what are your views on the future of the cruise industry in the Cayman Islands?
Well, first I have to give a real thanks to the CPR group. I did not go out and push for that referendum and collect those signatures. We would have had one of the biggest environmental disasters in this country. We would have had a big port, an expensive dock out there. We would have basically nobody in which to finance it or pay for it. So the debt of gratitude to the CPR group, I just want to record for that. Now, with regards to the cruise industry itself, cruise tourism as a place, as part of tourism, of Cayman tourism product. But let's face it, the government, thank God now, have finally admitted, I think a couple of weeks back, that the mass cruise tourism project can't work. And we need to go back to where we're more invested in niche market. The money is really the stay over market. But at the same time, start limiting cruise ships coming in and not have this big, massive where we have tens of thousands of people or thousands of people daily on the Georgetown roads, of course, then scaring the stay-over tourism scaring the stay-over tourists from even coming out to shop. So I think now that we have had a chance to COVID to reset it, we can now look in terms of how we can properly manage our cruise numbers based on the structure that we have or the infrastructure that we have. Because that has been one of the biggest shortfalls of this government is proper planning. So thank God again for the CPR group for stopping the governments in their track in that regard, because that would have been a big problem. But now we need to sit back now, look at a proper tourism plan to see what it is that we can do to increase stay-over tourism and also at the same time have cruise tourism play their role. But it can't be a situation like we had in the last National Tourism Plan that was all cruise dominated and you couldn't find Caymaneers anywhere listed in that plan because they completely forgot about our stay-over market, which is really our bread and butter. So now that they have stopped coming, let us look at how we're going to slowly bring them back.
Thank you, Mr. Saunders. Mr. Frederick, same question, please.
Thank you, Mike. The cruise industry is a very important pillar for our economy. It has brought us where we are today. It's one of those pillars that has brought us up to where we are today. And we just can't throw them away. I mean, they have a say in these islands. In fact, these islands are one of their favorites to come to. Cayman is a very laid-back country. We like to keep what we have. We like to adapt to what we're used to. We don't like to see many changes. Hence the outcry that we had against the port. We're very conscious to our environment. We take things like that to heart. And I myself personally did not support the port because I thought it was just too expensive for the country. However, government does listen and government do act when it's needed. And I support if we can at least have the cruise ships stay a little bit longer when they're in port if we are going to reduce the numbers of cruises coming here to the island. We can have them here longer. There is nothing wrong with the system. It just needs to be better controlled. We have what you would call airline passengers that is more inviting to the government for these visitors to come and spend more money with us. But it's not all about the money because it's about people sailing from port to port, enjoying fun places, being comfortable amongst our people and enjoying themselves. They also spend money. And we're in the business to earn money. And we just can't close the doors on everything that the ports want. We need to meet them halfway. We need to come to some conclusions and go on forward as a country.
Thank you, Mr. Frederick.
Thank you. The next question addresses the very important matter about our youth. So what do you regard as the top two issues facing our youth of today, and how do you intend to address these concerns if elected? Mr. Frederick, over to you.
Thank you. Youth development. I've been hitting on this throughout the conversation. Our youth is our jewels. There are diamonds, there are pearls, there are everything. I believe government can do a lot more with assisting NVOs in supporting youth development programs. I think the grants that they do get from the government is a little bit too low, and that can be enhanced to get better coverage for our youths. I will work with any government that gets in office to make sure that our youths have facilities. They have sports, study groups, counseling offices that they can go to in one location. I will focus on ensuring that they are happy because right now they have nowhere to go. They have nothing to do. They have no one to speak to. Some of them are afraid to talk to their parents. Some of them fear that. And I think kids are more comfortable talking to counselors and to people who they believe in without fear, and they will open up to their problems. We have a need for these facilities. We have a need to bring these facilities to encourage our youths to go to them. Back in my days when I was growing up, we had things like teen disco. We had no issues with any criminal behavior. We had no issues with any bad behavior. And we all enjoyed ourselves, went home, and had a peaceful time and we're looking forward for that. Again, the kids nowadays don't have that. They have Nintendos. They have no parents in the house. They have nobody to talk to. And when they go out the door, they see a guy on the tree smoking a ganja stick. And guess what they're going to adapt to? We need to pay more attention to our youths, and also government has to invest a little bit more into them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Frederick, and over to you, Mr. Saunders.
It takes a village to raise a child. But if the villagers are struggling under bad policies by the government, high cost of living that the government is doing anything about, and inadequate employee benefits, then a lot of stuff are going to get left behind. And as a result, it is affecting our kids. Studies have shown in the UK that most mothers, and I to 10 would agree the same would apply to Cayman also when they did the study, that most women or most mothers spend an average 2.3 hours before they go to work doing stuff around the home, and 4.6 hours when they come home from work in the evening. Again, we need to support the parents and put the parents in a position to be parents. And this is why the work-life balance is one of the things that we are pushing, where people at least can get home at a decent time, spend time with their children, make sure they have a proper meal, and help them with their homework. These are the kind of things that are needed. We have now become economic slaves, and the children as a result. I grew up at a time when I could have come home to my mother. And we made a very hard decision to sacrifice a lot so that my wife, Shawnette, could also do the same for my kids. And I'm really eternally grateful to her for it. But for us to take care of the youths, we need to take care of the parents. And this is where it starts. And again, it's disgraceful because we're spending $80,000 a year to lock up one prisoner, $150,000 a year for one child in Bonaventure. But if you take those same resources and start helping the families with it, you would actually see it can actually go much further. But unfortunately, it seems that this has become, again, another big business type project. So we need more activities in place for the children also. We need things that can bring them together. But it starts by making sure the parents are in a position to be parents. Children can't grow themselves.
Thank you.
Mr. Saunders, staying with you for the 15th question, the last one in this current round. Focusing on the future of financial services. The question is, given that financial services is critical to the island's economy, how do you think the country should respond to the recent FATF grey listing and the European Union's intention to blacklist us, even though we have met most of their requirements?
One of the things that we need to recognize, as with any relationship, whether it be international relationship or local relationship, is that you have to first get along before you can go along. To give credit where credit is due, we recognize, well, the government back in around, I think 10 years ago, to give Premier McKeever Bush then at the time his credit, is that he looked at establishing offices outside of Cayman to start building relationships with international partners where we can tell our story. You can't expect someone to jump on a plane today and just arrive in Europe, Brussels, or anywhere and just start getting deals done. It takes a certain amount of relationships building. The situation that we found ourselves in is a combination of incompetence by the government, laziness by the government, and also people externally don't understand what it is that we do and why we're, in a sense, a tax-neutral jurisdiction. We are not telling our story the right way. We do not have the right lobbyists. 10 years ago this month, I actually brought former U.S. President Bill Clinton to Cayman. And the very last question I asked him, Will, I think you were actually there at that event too, was what can Cayman do to fix their perception and get better cooperation? And he made it clear, we have a marketing problem. We're not spending the right money in terms of getting the right lobbyists. We're not doing what it is we're supposed to do. And Brexit is the perfect example of this. In 2016, the UK people voted to leave the EU. We lost a voice in 2016. And it basically took 5 years later for the government to announce that they now will be setting up an office in Brussels to go and start building those relationships. We should have, the minute that Brexit vote came in, we should have started looking at getting offices in Brussels and start looking at lobbying EU members. This is what international diplomacy is about. You just can't sit on there, throw a representative up there and expect the same results. This is just children playing in a busy street. And we need to do a little bit. We can do better. We have to do better.
Thank you, Mr. Saunders. Mr. Frederick, same question, please.
Thank you, Mike. I think the Cayman Islands have done a tremendous job with answering the European Union on their concerns when it comes to our financial markets. I believe we need to be a little bit more proactive, though, instead of reactive, because we sit and we wait until they tell us that something is wrong, and then they shove us back on a gray or black list. If we had lobbyists out there in Europe, we can be a little bit ahead in knowing what their concerns are and deal with them first and foremost at the European level, instead of waiting for a news report saying that we're back on a grey list unexpectedly. The goalposts will always be changing. It will never be right when it comes to us and the European Union. They've never stopped trying until they get us to either come out to financial services or for us to just stop reacting to their requests and put them in court. However, it is unwise to just say, let's stop dealing with the European Union. We need to find ways and means to stop dealing with things that don't get us anywhere. We need to engage the citizens. We need to engage the businesses. We need to engage a lot of other, we need to engage lawyers, judges to be on our side to fight these people. I think my opponent, though, knows how it is to be what these regulations brings to us. I mean, he has been in the financial service industry for a long time, and he has seen and felt the answers, the regulations that were put in place, being in such a position. We need to be humble and we need to unite as one.
Thank you, Mr. Frederick. So we've gone through 15 questions and 3 rounds of questions. We'll have one final round right after this short break. Please stay tuned.
Feed the family for less with Foster's Pick 5.
Choose from a range of meats including chicken thighs, pork chops, ground meats, beef stir-fry, sirloin steaks, and more, and only pay $19.99 for any 5-packs.
The meat is always fresh and never previously frozen. It's the perfect way to stock up for the week. That's dinner sorted.
Look out for Pick 5 in the meat department at all Foster's supermarket locations.
Foster's, better value because we care.
In the last episode, we learned about the important role of companies here in Cayman that do business with overseas customers and generate new wealth for the Cayman Islands economy. But what about all the other companies in the Cayman Islands? How do they fit into our prosperity engine? Every business in the Cayman Islands falls into one of 3 groups, or tiers. Each tier plays a critical role in our economy. The first tier is made up of all the companies that do business with overseas customers and bring money into our economy. Companies in this tier are like the gas tank of our economic prosperity engine. The more we have in the tank, the farther we can go. Although most well-known companies in this tier are in financial services like Butterfield Bank or tourism like the Ritz-Carlton, there are many other well-known Tier 1 companies doing business with overseas customers, like Uniregistry, Health City, and all of the companies in Cayman Enterprise City. The second tier of the economy is all the companies that do business with other local companies, like IT and marketing consultants, or companies that sell supplies to bars and restaurants. These companies are also very important because without them, the companies they supply would need to buy their goods and services from overseas. So while companies in Tier 1 bring money into our economy, companies in Tier 2 help keep it here. The third tier is made up of all the companies that provide services to people that live and work in the Cayman Islands. Companies in this tier include supermarkets, dry cleaners, mechanics, gyms, doctors, dentists, architects, house builders, florists, and gardeners. These companies are important sources of employment and business opportunities for our people. And they play a really important role because without them, Cayman wouldn't be a very nice place to live. So to recap, Tier 1 companies do business with customers overseas. Tier 2 companies do business with other companies in Cayman. And Tier 3 companies do business with those who live here. Every company and self-employed contractor in the Cayman Islands falls into one of these three tiers, and they all play an important role in making our nation prosperous, helping bring money into our country, improve our economy, and creating jobs. And without them, the Cayman Islands wouldn't be the great country that it is. Thanks for watching, and remember to share this on social media so we can all help fuel the economic prosperity engine. When companies do well, everyone does well. Not just the business owners, but the employees, other businesses, the government, and even the customers. Seriously, to learn how, let's look at how money flows through a company. When a company sells its goods and services, they receive money, which is called revenue. That money is then split up and used in a number of different ways. Some of the money goes to employees. To keep it simple, we'll call this salaries. Some of the money goes to pay for products and services the company needs to keep running. Those expenses are called overheads. Some of the revenue goes to the government in duties and fees. And finally, any money left over goes to the owners of the business as profit. So no matter what products or services a company provides, it's like a machine that takes in money as revenue and spits money out as salaries, overheads, government fees, and profits. It's really that simple. Every dollar that a company takes in gets turned into one of those four things. Okay, so how does it benefit everyone when companies do well? Let's take a closer look. First, with salaries. Salaries are important for the economy because most people get most of their income from their employment. Next, government fees. In the Cayman Islands, the vast majority of the government's revenue comes from duties and fees paid by businesses. That money goes to pay for important government services like education, emergency services, healthcare, and infrastructure. Then we have overheads. Quite simply, one company's overhead is just another company's revenue. When a hotel needs supplies, they buy them from local suppliers. Those suppliers turn that revenue into salaries, overheads, duties and fees, and if they're lucky, profit. Some people think that business owners make too much money, but the truth is, the average company only makes 7.5 cents in profit for every dollar in sales. And that's assuming they make a profit at all. The other 92.5 cents goes to pay for salaries for staff, overheads that become revenue of other companies, and duties and fees that pay for the government services we need. In order to become successful, most business owners have to work extremely hard and take a lot of risks. If it wasn't for the ability to make a profit, the owner wouldn't have started the business in the first place. And if nobody started any businesses, there would be no jobs for employees, which means no salaries, no overheads to support other businesses, and no money from government fees to pay for our government services. So yeah, when companies do well, everyone does well. In the next video, we'll take a closer look at why countries need economic growth. For now, thanks for watching. And remember to share this video with your family and friends so they can learn more about our economic prosperity engine.
Welcome back to the Chamber of Commerce Candidates Forums for Bodden Town West. I'll turn it back over to Chris Duggan for the next round of questions, which is the final round.
Thanks very much, Will. The next topic of discussion is on cost of living. I know it's something you've both touched on already this evening. The cost of living ranked as the top issue for respondents in the most recent Chamber Public Survey. So what additional strategies would you propose to address the issue beyond those that you've already touched on this evening? And first to you, Mr. Frederick.
Thank you, Chris. Cost of living in this country is just too high, and I mentioned that before. But we also got to educate our children and get them to become smarter and to gain higher paying jobs. We also got to teach them that coming back home from college is not the only option that you have. You can get experience working overseas. You can make a lot more money there too as well, and then the cost of living is also cheaper. I believe it is time for us to get a consumer protection plan in place. Prices are too high. I have seen recently where prices in some companies are at one level, and if you go to two other levels, it's still pro-COVID prices. And I say to myself, well, why is that? Because, I mean, this island is booming, and I see the differences for the same type of bottled water in one place, and I go another place, and the bottled water is 3 times as expensive. And I say to myself, something is wrong. We have no price control. We need to put and get in place a price control mechanism to protect the consumers of this country. We need to also deal, and it's forever outstanding, with the utility company and the gas import companies on the cost of fuel coming into the island. When we have fuel shortages, our prices go up. When there's too much, our prices remain up. So something is certainly wrong, and we have to look deep into that to cut down the price of the country overall costs.
Thanks, Mr. Frederick. Over to you, Mr. Saunders.
This is where I have a fundamental disagreement with the government. And I listened to the Premier the other night when he said that everybody, since he started out in politics, this has been one of the issues that no government has been able to deal with, especially when they get there. And this is where different thinking is needed. First, there are 3 things that we need to look at to seriously address the cost of living. You look at things like electric bicycle, electric hoverboards, electric scooters, bone china, leather briefcases, binoculars, cameras, all of that kind of stuff duty-free. But then you look at a Rolex watch, 7% duty. And nothing is wrong with that, because we do have a duty-free as part of our tourism industry. But then when you're going to take baby diapers, baby strollers, baby powder, and sanitary napkins that every woman need, and charge 22% duty on it, you've got to realize that we have our priorities misplaced. How can the government in good conscience give away so many stuff duty-free, but at the same time turn around then and charge 22% on basic items? That also affects the cost of living. The second issue we need to look at is consumer protection, which the government didn't, as the legislation drafted, but does not want to implement. And again, I know a lot of your members are actually pushing against that, because you look at something as simple as milk. Milk is duty-free, but the price that they charge for milk, they literally pop it off in the consumer. And those are the kind of behaviors that need to stop. Then there's also the issue of demand and supply. And this is one of the things when we talk about diversifying the economy, is that we need to start looking at some of the things of what we can produce locally. I mean, a lot of stuff that we import, we do have the skill set and also the comparative advantage of actually bringing it, doing it, getting it done here, which will actually make it cheaper. So fuel, again, is another issue that we need to regulate. And again, they don't want to touch it. So there are a lot of hard decisions that need to be made. And that's why you need serious people to make these serious decisions.
Thanks very much, Mr. Saunders.
Staying with you, Mr. Saunders, our next question focuses on employment and the Department of Work. With regard to the new Department of Work system that has been implemented in recent years, do you consider the system a success? And if not, what improvements would you recommend?
I must admit one thing now. I do have a lot of confidence in the new Director of Work. For the few times I've dealt with him, I can say where he's passionate and I actually find to be very competent and dedicated in terms of what he's doing. So do they have the right personnel there to get it done? I believe that they do, based on my interactions with them. The biggest issue that we still have is still enforcement of laws. And I think this is one of the things that we really need to start taking seriously, or more seriously, in terms of giving the resources. We know of the violations, and we just need one public embarrassment of some of these companies to show people that we're really serious. Because you cannot have so many thousands of Caymanians out of work, and yet you still have so many work permits being issued. And again, this is, where I have a lot of differences with your members in that regard. But we need the laws to be enforced. Is it successful? On paper, the concept makes sense. I do not think they've had enough time yet in terms of how to properly evaluate it. But the concept of it is actually sound. I'll give them the props in that regard. I can't take that from them. But at the same time, it still comes back to the enforcement issue. So I think it's a little bit more time. But what I would like to see more than anything is the enforcement of laws where we actually give Caymanians some level of protection. And that is actually what is missing. But it's still early to tell at this point. But like I said, I do have confidence in the current director and also the chief officer in that area, Mr. Howell. Again, decent people, and they're willing to actually do the work.
Thank you, Mr. Saunders. Mr. Frederick, same question.
Thank you, Mike. I have confidence in work. I believe since the start of the organization that it is taking its time to trickle in and to really settle. I want to agree with Chris here that the enforcement part of it is something that we have to look to. I think they need to hire more staff in that particular area and get out there into the businesses to ensure what they have planned and what they are submitting to work is actually what is going on at the workforce. We also need to look at how the system works when a Caymanian wants to get employed. Some has complained that it is too tedious to even sign on to the website, and they get turned off to go into the office to actually submit or sign up for work. Ways and means of addressing these concerns for the people of Cayman is not just about going to work, but also going themselves to privately to engage in employment. We just can't depend on work to get people employed. I see it as a tool only when there is a problem, where I have sit as a HR manager, and I had a young lady crying in my interview when she told me that she had applied for 105. She did 105 applications, and I was the only person to call her and give her an interview. That is what we're facing in this country. We can't blame that just on work. We have to also blame that on the businesses.
Thank you.
The next question addresses the issue of civil partnerships, and talking to you first, Mr. Frederick, what are your views on the recently enacted Civil Partnership Act?
Thank you. I think everybody must be treated fairly, must be given the chance to live the lives that they want to live. But also, my point of view is just my point of view. We knew the situation that was going on in the country. We knew the back and forths that the politicians had with this bill. And they made a choice. They failed to pass the civil union law, and it went to court. So that process was followed. It winded up going to the governor, who passed it into law. And I think where we are today now with that law, and with what I'm getting from the people I know who are LG or L-cube-GB, if I got it wrong, is that they're happy and satisfied that something was done to address their concerns. Everybody has a right to be here and to be happy. They have a right to be just like any other heterosexual couple, and we need to embrace them and accept them. This is the law. Caymanians are known to follow the law and to behave according to laws of the country. You don't see anything or hear anything much now about it. I think it has been settled. I think there's still one case at the Privy Council. And after that is complete, I think everybody will be satisfied with the outcome.
Great. Thanks very much, Mr. Frederick, and over to you, Mr. Saunders.
First of all, I want to acknowledge my mother, Rose. She came in a little bit afterwards. One of the things I said to my mother when I got involved in politics is that I will never ever do anything to embarrass her or the family. I come from a very strong Christian background. However, as a legislator, I also recognize, and for my personal political belief, I do believe in the separation of church and state. My personal beliefs, I don't think at the end of the day should weigh into my job as a legislator. I have to separate the two, regardless of how it is what I think. As I said during my debate, if I was living in the United States, I would have supported gay marriage for the simple fact that within their constitution, they do recognize the separation of church and state. However, in our constitution, where we speak about spiritual value, moral values, and social values, our constitution is also clear with regards to the definition between a man and a woman. The real shame in all of this, and this is where the lack of leadership came in. I look at the UK. It spent, 82 days consulting on a bill to discuss parking management. You take something as serious as a civil partnership bill. You give legislators 30 days in which to go out and consult their constituents. And then on top of all of that, you issue, 2, 3 more legislation that would have required changing, when in fact, it should have been about 10, 11, 12. The way in which that entire process was done, shoved down people's throat, that is the kind of political behavior this country don't need. And that is the kind of behavior that I am running to stop. Everyone has a right to be equal under the law. And that's just the way it is. And that's my belief. And I think that's the way the law should be applied. But when the UK is going to get up and tell us about human rights and all that kind of stuff, when bearing in mind, back in 2015, you were still paying slave owners for slave 180 years after the abolition of slavery. The UK is in no right to tell any one of the Cayman Islands anything about human rights.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Saunders, staying with you, my last question is on the subject of pension reform. The recent withdrawal from private sector pension funds has depleted the ability for many residents to have enough funds when they retire. What ideas would you recommend to address this future shortfall?
I recognize that problem from get-go, Mike. And that's the reason why in the last sitting in Delhi, I actually brought the motion asking the government to let us sit down to see what we can do to fix this problem, and also at the same time put in a safety net for people to make sure if something goes wrong again, that they would be protected and they wouldn't have to go and raid the pension fund. The Premier downright rejected it, said it would have been too expensive for businesses. I think the Premier failed to realize that the whole purpose of an economy is to make the lives of people better. With regards to pension reform, there are 2 things that we need to look at primarily. One, the contribution rate. Let us be honest, 10% is 10% can't work. At that rate, you're going to take you 10 years just to save 1 year's salary, and if you work for 50 years, you just save 5 years' salary. Women are living to 85, men are living to 80. There is no way 5 years' salary, or even if you double that to 10 years, will be adequate for anyone. So the contribution rate has to be looked at. The second thing that we need to look at is actually investment returns. The days in which when the pension was passed 20 odd years ago, the market was one way as opposed to what it is today. You're not going to get those returns back today. And this is one of the reasons why we're looking at the creation of a bond market where we can start bringing back our own pension money here to see what industries that we can actually do to diversify our own economy and start keeping more of that money here so we can get better returns on it. I mean, you take something as simple as CUC, which is guaranteed a kind of return that it gets. No pension, some pensions aren't even giving you that. So to go out and start looking at those kind of stuff is what we need to start looking at in terms of bringing back the pension here. The other issue that we need to start looking at again is the access to long-term money, which I think will also again benefit the returns, because Cayman is a very expensive jurisdiction. And if you're going to if you want to invest any money, this is a good place to invest it because you get a good return. That's why so many people are coming here. But the only people who want to invest in our pension here is our own people.
Thank you, Mr. Saunders. Mr. Frederick, same question, please.
Thank you, Mike. I believe that the pension actually works. I believe the investment tools that the administrators have put behind it in investing our money overseas has been working diligently for us over the years. However, we can do better. And it's time for us to take our own money and take some of it to reinvest back into this country. You know, when we took our pensions out, a lot of people cried about it. But at the end of the day, it did a lot to stabilize this economy during the COVID. Many use it as deposits for affordable homes, I know that. Many have their money in the credit union put aside for a rainy day. It's more easy to access. So a lot of people did not spend their money unwisely. A lot have saved their money and put it up. I believe that we need to invest, I would say, and I guess to say 1/3 of our pension money back into this country. We can use that and put it in the credit unions. We can put it in our development bank. We can use it for government projects to do projects. We can use it for many things, but it has to be controlled, and it has to be a hands-off approach from government. I believe that it can be done. I believe that the people of this country deserve to have a say in where their money goes to be invested. After all, it is their money. They should have a say on where it goes and who uses it. So take, for example, if the money was coming here back to the credit union, that money could have been used for Caymanians to get loans to build houses and homes and to improve their businesses. So we have to also think outside the box at sometimes, because if we keep going down one track and don't take considerations for other tracks, we're bound to lose sight of what we have and what the future holds for all of us.
Thank you, Mr. Frederick.
Great, thank you. So this is the last question of this evening's forum, and it's addressing growth management. So we keep hearing about increasing the population to 100,000 and increased development. Do you support this continued development? And what measures would you recommend so that Caymanians will benefit from a growing economy? And Mr. Frederick, over to you first.
Thank you, Chris. We have to look at this at their angle, because the way that we're developing, we are encouraging over 100,000 people to come here. We are catering for them, but yet we are not catering for our own. We don't have no lands. We don't have enough roads. Our infrastructure is not there to support that amount of people into this country. So you take, for example, you increase your population by another 40,000 people. That's 40,000 people more into these small islands. We have the road system that's traffic jam. We have jobs that people are looking to get. We have an unemployment rate that is now an issue. And I think we have to develop in a timely manner to control the pace of the amount of people that we let into the island. We have children going off to college that needs jobs when they return. I've known young Caymanians that have given their life and their savings to go to law school and just can't get their articles. I mean, these are things that are facing the country. We got to find out how to deal with these stuff before we talk about getting more people into the country. If we don't have a good infrastructure in place, we just cannot afford to go any further with our population growth. We need a national development plan that will work for us for another 50 to 75 years, and we have to stick to it. And according to that plan, go yearly. You can do it by the decades in growth management.
Thank you, Mr. Frederick and Mr. Saunders.
This is part of one of the uncomfortable part of this discussion. when you look at the average voter age in this election is 51. When you look at our fertility rate, when you look at the indigenous Caymanian or the Caymanian dependency ratio, I should say, which puts us at one of the worst in the world, you then recognize that the growth that they're talking about for population isn't about residents or anything. It's about consumers. Because this is what it comes down to. Just as though I've sat down and I've ran the numbers, we have taken the current population, the demographics we have, and I've fast forwarded 20 years in the future, I realize that a good chunk of people who are spending a lot of money today will not be able to do so in the next 20 years when they go to retire, or, God forbid, something else. And this is just businesses and a lot of people making the steps now to make sure that we have a consumer base. What we can do to get more people to participate is, one, what I propose was a 0% stamp duty on the first three properties that Caymanians purchase. That is needed, because that's one of the biggest barriers that's stopping people from buying property is stamp duty. The other issue that's stopping people from participating is access to capital. And this is the reason why we want to create that bond market. So when you can start getting 20 to 30-year bond money that is not payable immediately, what you don't have is that the minute someone is within year 5 or year 6 struggling, you don't have someone out there trying to chase them out of their homes because you have financed that expansion or financed their credit line with overnight deposit money. Nobody has given a bank a 20, 30-year deposit, and we need to stop pushing a country like that. This is the reason why we need a bond market to allow our people to have access to capital. There are a lot of great people here with a lot of great ideas, but they need to get access to capital, and that's why that bond market is key. And that is what we're going to need to move this country to the next level.
I'd like to thank the candidates. We've gone through 20 questions. We are now going to take a short commercial break. And when we return, we'll have the closing remarks from each of our candidates. Please stay tuned.
Behind everything we do is a promise. Better. Better because we care. Because we all have a common goal, to be better at cooking, to be better at eating right, and taking care of ourselves, to live in a better community, to just feel better. Today and tomorrow and the next day. Do it for you. Do it for them. Do it to prove something to yourself. Do it to carry on a family recipe. Or just because. But when you aim for the stars, better just works. We're Fosters. And we're better. Because of you, because of them, because of this place. And because we care.
Welcome back to the Chamber of Commerce Candidates Forum for Bodden Town West. We've now reached that stage in this forum where we're going to have closing remarks, and we're going to begin with Mr. Chris Saunders.
Well, I don't see the clock. I don't want to, so I can actually gauge my thing there. But my friends, elections have consequences. And this is what, and the purpose of election is to determine the will of the people. Our goal here is to see what it is, what we campaign, the issues that we're campaigning on, to determine your will. This is about continuing the policies of the last 20 years of both what the PPM and the UDP has done. This is what this election is about. And I would say to everyone, if you believe that the trajectory that we are on, and we're giving every Caymanian and every resident an equal opportunity to live their best life, I would tell you by all means, vote for the members of the group. I don't know what it is anymore, because I think the UDP no longer exists. But vote for them. However, if you do believe that we can do better and that we should be doing better, I'm going to ask you to give me and many other independents who are running as part of our group an opportunity. We believe that we can tackle the cost of living in this country, but it's going to take very hard decisions. The type of decisions that we need to take in this country can't be made because a lot of the people who are causing your challenges and your miseries are the same people that finance the political machineries of these big beasts. And that is why your life is sometimes not as good as it should be. And this is what this election is about, is making the changes today so we can start living in a better Cayman tomorrow. Cost of living is an issue, and it's not going to be fixed without proper consumer protection and proper government legislation. The housing problem is not going to be fixed as long as we're trying to basically tell Caymanians that they can borrow money using overnight money. If we were to bring in a bond market, for example, and all you're paying for the first 20, 30 years is just interest, but you know you have that principal payment at the end, you know you have the opportunity that even if you stumble in year 5 or year 6, no one is coming to take you out of your home. No one is looking to push you out for the simple fact that you have a cushion there that you can catch, but you can recover. We also need to look at something as simple as putting in a safety net for people where they can have some level of dignity. Nobody should be living or going to bed worried that if they get a heart attack, a stroke, or one medical emergency, that their family is not going to be taken care of. This is the Cayman that we need to start building. This is the Cayman we need to work towards. A Cayman that can guarantee to everyone, not that you're going to be rich, but a Cayman where no one has to be poor and no one has to be struggling. Thank you very much, and God bless.
Mr. Frederick.
I'd just like to thank the Chamber for having me here. I want to thank the people of Georgetown West and the people of the Cayman Islands for giving me the opportunity to come on stage tonight to address them in closing. If you, the people of Georgetown West, are willing to give me an opportunity to serve as your MP, I promise and pledge that I will be my best, do my best to represent each and every one of you if elected as MP. I am a true and honest open leader, and I will engage with all members in Parliament, all other 18 members in Parliament, to make sure that I can deliver the things that I ran on in this general election. However, we have had 4 years of representation that the people has called out to me and said that we had no delivery from my opponent. And as leaders, we need to be responsible for the people first who elect us in office. We cannot just think about national issues and forget the local issues that is facing the people in the Georgetown West constituencies. I'm a different leader. I tend to engage with a lot of people. I am humble. I am a member of the Alliance, which is working with the PPM party. And we know what we are facing. We know leadership. We know the problems the countries have around us. And we know what the people desires in this country. I am not making any promises to anyone, but I will do my best if elected to take care of national issues, to engage with people, to engage with the government, and to engage with any private developer or person within the area of Georgetown West to ensure that something gets done for that constituency. I want to thank my opponent, too, for being here tonight and for engaging with me on stage, and to the people here in Georgetown West. And I also would like to thank my family who's listening, and my friends and colleagues and the members of my committee, that the time is near, the future is here. Let's get going, let's keep it clean, and let's move forward as one people.
Well, thank both candidates, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Mike Gibbs, the President of the Chamber, for closing remarks.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Will. On behalf of the Chamber Council and staff, I would like to thank the Bodden West candidates for participating in this evening's forum. I trust that the forum will help the voters in that constituency determine who to vote for when they go to the polls on the 14th of April. I would also like to thank Foster's for their major sponsorship of the Chamber candidate forums, as well as Affinity, Bodden's Legal and Corporate, and DART. If you're interested in viewing more of the Growth Matters video series that have been playing during tonight's commercial breaks, They can be accessed at growthmatters.ky. Please join us Thursday evening as we welcome Elvis McKeever from the constituency of Cayman Brac East. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you will join us tomorrow night at the same time. Good night.
March in Cayman is hot, but at Foster's, it's frozen.
Frozen Food Month is back, and we're giving away 4 $250 Foster's cards. To enter, just purchase any 3 products from the frozen department from now until March 27th. It's that easy.
You could grab a frozen pizza for dinner, frozen berries for a morning smoothie, and frozen plant-based sausages for something different.
Exactly. Just don't forget to enter online at fosters.ky/frozen food month. Foster's, better because we care.